Are you comfortable with where the coalition's at right now when it comes to the climate debate, these targets, this discussion around it? Does it risk opening a can of worms in your party where some of your colleagues don't support the whole idea of net zero by 2050?
Well, it's great to be with you, Kieran. I will start by saying go Pies, and also pay tribute to Neil Danaher and Fight MND. It's an important cause that we need to support. But onto the question that you raised, let's be really clear. Peter Dutton outlined a factual statement over the weekend. The Labor Party, the government, by their own admission, are not going to meet their own target by 2030. And what's really interesting about the Prime Minister's response, the Energy Minister's response, and I caught the Assistant Treasurer before, is they have not spent any time outlining and defending that statement. They're not showing a pathway to the 2030 target. They're turning it back and criticising the opposition, which shows that they're not going to hit that target. They know they're not, and there's serious questions to ask, and we have the right to hold them to account. This government, whether it's energy, whether it's housing, whether it's aged care, as we saw today, they're very good at making announcements and setting targets, but on every target they've set, they've failed dismally to get anywhere near those. And that's what we're holding them to account and making factual statements that on their own numbers, they're not going to hit that target. And in many ways, we're seeing whether it's the EV policy that they've changed, whether it's in Victoria, the offshore wind policy is falling apart, the transmission lines are behind. There is no way they're hitting that target. It's getting worse every day. And we need to have an honest conversation as a community about how we get there, what the cost is, how we make sure there's reliability in the grid, because this, as I've said previously, is the most significant transformation this country is undertaking.
Are you concerned, though, about the impact, not just in terms of the Teal seats and those seats that are keen for more ambition on climate, but more broadly in the region, in the Pacific, with our Pacific neighbours, who are, of course, very sensitive to this issue?
And no doubt this is a topic that fires people up, has a lot of emotion, and we should never forget, Kieran, that there are three key things that we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get to net zero by 2050, but we also need to ensure that we have reliability in the grid and importantly, make sure that we have cost down at a reasonable level for consumers, for the community, for business. So we've got to work through all of those methodically and make sure it's achievable. That's why as a coalition, we've spoken about nuclear power, because the reality is the science shows there is only one form of net zero emissions baseload power at scale, and that's nuclear. And so, those independents in the Teal seat should be having the conversation about nuclear because the science supports it. There's obviously work to do. And we appreciate that our friends in the Pacific as well are deeply concerned about climate change and about getting to net zero. But what they need is realistic action that's going to bring emissions down, not targets. A target that you don't hit is irrelevant. Hitting a number and actually achieving it is what's going to bring emissions down. And this government doesn't have a plan to actually bring emissions down while keeping prices reasonable and ensuring baseload reliable power in our network, in our grid.